We begin tonight with an open letter to the Ministers of Education, Social Development and Social Housing, in which a Dunedin principal has described the situation of some children at her school as truly heartbreaking. Heidi Hayward says she wrote the letter because, and I quote, "the children have no voice and are relying upon us to do the right thing." She describes children living in, and again I quote, "dangerous and dysfunctional homes and facing a future of crime and an almost inevitable prison sentence in some cases." Heidi Hayward is principal of Dunedin North Intermediate. It's a Decile 6 school, for whatever that means, in which many of the children are flourishing and face a life with confidence and strong family support. But the most at-risk students at the school are increasingly vulnerable. And after attempting to get greater support for them through the right channels and behind closed doors, she's now written an open letter to the ministers because, and I quote, "I want to be on the record as having warned you." Heidi Hayward told me a single word sums up why she sent the letter.
Desperation. I've been working in the education sector for 18 years and I feel like nothing changes. So we go to people and we say we're struggling here and we get something rebranded or we get told there's something in the pipeline, and actually there's never anything in the pipeline. There are Band-Aids, and the Band-Aids are always put in place to cover gaping wounds that really need surgery and, probably a course of antibiotics too.
I believe you say that the public would be horrified if they knew what we are dealing with daily. What are you dealing with daily?
Well, we have this image, I think, that we live in this lovely, clean, green country where we look after our citizens, and we certainly do for a good number of them. And there are a good number of adults who can speak for themselves and who can make it clear that they're struggling and ask for help. But we're dealing with kids, and the kids that we see, and we won't be, we're not even a low decile school, we'll be the tip of the iceberg in some cases, but the kids that we see are kids that aren't getting fed, that are dealing with abuse in the home, with drug use in the home, with, in some cases, taking drugs themselves, and they have no voice. And actually we've got very little to support them with. So, of course, our job is education. We're supposed to be tasked with educating these kids. And I've always taken solace that at least when I couldn't educate them, I could provide some sort of stability and security. And I just feel more and more I can't even provide that. And I don't want to be a party to that, really.
Can we talk specifically about Child A in your open letter? Child A is living with their drug-addicted parents. Regular drug deals are taking place in their home and they feel unsafe. SIFs intervened, removed the child. The child ran away from the one bed available and has been back home now for a month. Is anything about this situation satisfactory for Child A?
Nothing. And I want to be really clear, I'm not blaming Child, Youth and Family either. My experience with Child, Youth and Family is that they are fantastic people doing an incredible job with nothing. They've got nothing to dish out. They've got nothing to provide for these kids. And they would agree, they do agree entirely. But what more can they do? They're not resourced.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but you say we have made numerous SIFs notifications. When I spoke to SIFs again yesterday to express my growing concern about this child, I was told that there was simply nowhere else for them to go.
Yeah, and that, I think, is the guts of this for me. I'm just intensely frustrated that we're willing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on keeping people incarcerated, but we won't do the same thing to protect kids from this. And we could help. We could do. If we had $100,000 a year, which is what it costs, Michael Woodhouse tells us, to keep people in prison, we could work wonders. Child, Youth and Family could work wonders with $100,000 a year. But it's just backwards to me. I don't understand why we wouldn't be putting the resource in at the top of the cliff rather than waiting for the bottom.
And you say there is a predictable future of crime, drug use and dysfunction. I want to go to a key paragraph which talks about the new at-risk funding formula. Now, this is the Ministry of Education trying to identify children who are at risk and funding the schools to do more work with them, right?
Yeah.
So that you are not merely the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, or in fact they don't end up in the justice system when they're 17 or 18, exactly as you have just predicted. Can you read me that paragraph?
Yeah. So this is new on our funding for, notices this year, the new at-risk funding. And so what I've written here is the new at-risk funding formula that the Ministry of Education has introduced identifies that we have 49 students at risk. And the definition for that is children whose parents have been on benefits for 75% of the first 5 years of their life, or have been on benefits for 75% of the past 5 years. So 49 children in our school is a fifth of the school, and we've been funded the grand total of $4,549.33 to support these 49 families. In real terms, this allows us $92.84 per student, or 1 day per annum of teacher aid time.
Right, so that's verbatim from your letter, and I just want to go over that. There is an at-risk funding formula that the Ministry of Education has introduced, and a bit of a fuss was made about this, that this was the right kind of intervention to help these children. You have 49 students identified as being at risk according to that formula, and you get $92 per student per year.
That's correct.
Does that make any difference at all?
None. We're spending more than that already. Teacher aid funding in New Zealand comes in at about $18 an hour, and but by the time you take off GST and so on, we actually get in the hand somewhere between $14 and $15 an hour. You know, you can imagine what sort of people we would be able to employ if we paid that out. So we're already funding tens of thousands of dollars a year to just top up teacher aids. And actually, I don't even believe that teacher aids are the best solution for these kids. I mean, the real top-end kids that I'm talking about are kids that need really well-trained. You know, they need the best of the best. They've had the worst of the worst, and these are the kids that need us to give them everything, the best that we've got, because the other kids succeed regardless. You know, they've got parents, they've got homes, they've got warm beds, they've got food. They're going to do well despite us. These other kids won't. And, you know, giving them a measly $92 a year, or putting in teacher aids when they need the really trained, really experienced, really able people, they never get access to them.
You say these children live in dangerous and dysfunctional homes.
Yeah.
Dangerous and dysfunctional. And then you say there is nothing unusual about our school. We are not even a low decile school. This is the real deal in any average New Zealand community. And I just wonder, why is it that letters like this that are open and that we get to talk about are so rare? Are most of the teachers you know, most of the principals you know, turning a blind eye to it, or simply struggling to cope in private?
Oh, absolutely struggling to cope in private, and nobody turns a blind eye. I am anxious about writing this letter. I don't want the attention. I certainly don't want the attention on our school, because I want to be very clear that I don't think that this is a problem of our little school in Dunedin. This is across the country. But one of the biggest challenges is that we're dealing with humans right now, and it's very hard not to identify, very hard to get the message out there about how bad things are for some families without identifying them as well. And so we've got that dual role of protecting kids and trying to advocate for them. But it's very hard to advocate for them when you can't be straight up about what's going on. And my experience of advocating for them is that we just get told, oh, there's something coming, or, well, there are the resources, but you just have to know how to access them. And I just am at the point that I don't believe the resources are there.
Heidi Hayward about the open letter she's written to the Ministers of Education, Social Development and Social Housing. What do the ministers say? Well, they weren't available for interviews, but we do have statements. First from Education Minister Hekia Parata. Next year, $12.3 million will be spent, specifically targeted at students in long-term benefit-dependent households who are most at risk of underachievement. Dunedin North Intermediate is a Decile 7 school, which means it has a lower proportion of students from low socioeconomic communities than most other schools. funding to help those students who are at risk of underachievement. And Social Development Minister Anne Tolley says she has asked SIFS to look into this immediately, but she also says, as for funding, the recent budget made an extra $347 million available to fund cost pressures and the transformation of the care system. We know things need to change, which is why I'm leading an overhaul of the care and protection system following an independent review, which will now see the Ministry for Vulnerable Children, Oranga Tamariki, begin operating next year. It will work with families earlier to prevent kids from needing to come into care, and if they do need to be taken out of their family, we need to get them into a safe, loving and stable home as soon as possible.